All right, so we're recording now. So if you say anything on here that you don't want out in the world, I don't know what to do because I don't edit. Anyway, I hope you all had a great Sunday, um, and were able to kind of either if you were jumping into this for the first time or the second time or the third time, that you're able to find ways for your community to connect. We had a lovely time on Sunday. Had our first kind of tech difficulties piece, so we'll give a bit of um, insight into that as well. So if you have not been with us today um, before, I share a little bit about the slides that we use, and you can feel free, as always, to liberate anything. I share these in the group. In the Facebook group as well, I started a thread that has where I would love to have people share their slides, their slide decks, if you have a streaming place to look. So in case you want to go and take a look at somebody else's, it's a good way to be able to see what other people are doing. I kind of feel like when you share in there, you're somewhat giving permission for people to use things, but it's always a good idea to go ahead and ask for permission before you liberate anything from anyone. Blanket statement for you all, for my stuff, you can go ahead and use anything you want. I accredit anything in my slides that I've adapted from anyone else. Also, anything that I've written in any of the liturgy, you can feel free to use. So, all right. So I'm going to walk through a little bit of this, and here we go. So we start again with just, we started about 9:30. We open everything up. Our tech deacons come on. I walk them through anything that's going to happen. We had 2 guests today, this past Sunday, so they were on early. We did sound checks with them. So pretty much like you would do on any Sunday morning. We did music and a speaker kind of as our guests. Made our 2 co-hosts, I made our 2 tech deacons co-hosts so they have more power. A couple of things to make sure that you do. We have been hearing now of some Zoom bombing going on. So if you look in the Facebook group of people, a couple of people shared this Sunday that people are showing up. One full-on naked guy shows up. So make sure that you do a couple of things beforehand. So if you need to write a checklist, 2 things at the very top is do not let other people other than the host share their screen. So you can unlock that later if you need somebody else to share their screen, but make sure that you're the only one, or you're the host that gets to share your screen. Otherwise, anybody can just pop in and share their screen, and we know that that could go painfully wrong. The other thing is, don't forget to record. So this Sunday, I finally recorded at the right time because I asked the tech deacon to do that. I'm stripping away all of the things that I need to do and find out people who are kind of are great with Zoom or are comfortable with technology, that they have them go ahead and take on some of those roles so you don't forget. So we just have a checklist of those, and those are the first 2 important that wanted to make sure that we assign out to people. So we had make sure you're not sharing your screen. You're the only one that can share your screen. Check all your sound pieces. The other thing that happened to us today is, for some reason, my computer shut down in the middle of everything going on, which only makes it even more important that you have 2 computers or 2 screens and logged in with their same host account, because that way your co-host is going to still be you. So I have 2 monitors going on at the same time, both logged in through our church account. Now, when you log in for your first one, you're the main host, and then your second account is your co-host. When you drop off, if something starts to happen, that means that you don't lose your show doesn't go down. You don't accidentally give your co-host to somebody else. Now, if you don't assign a co-host at the beginning of your Zoom meeting, it just goes to the next person, the person who first signed in, which generally in a small meeting is fine, but you have no idea about worship and who that's going to be. So you want to make sure that you have 2 logged in case 2 logged in accounts, just in case your show happens to go down. Now, I don't know what happened. I got to test through my stuff, but yeah, my computer shut down right in the middle. I was doing some fancy Windows, trying to flip Windows, and it decided to stop. All right, so I'm going to keep going through here. We do welcome and announcements, where I do somewhat kind of what we normally do when you would do announcements. So anything you want to do. We had 3 churches join us today, and so I made sure to welcome them from They had let me know that they would be there, so made sure to welcome them, and do a little bit of the same kind of stuff that you would do on any Sunday. I do my Zoom reminders as usual. So again, make sure that you give folks, because remember, just like a congregation where you have new people and visitors every Sunday, I treat this in the very same way. So even if folks have been coming, we're still trying to create a space where visitors are going to feel welcome. So we walk them through the Zoom piece, talk through the service itself and what folks are going to do. We do not send out any bulletin. We're not trying to get people on multiple screens or do any follow along. Remember, we're not streaming. It's kind of an interactive. So we don't do bulletins. I just kind of walk them through at the beginning. And then we do our centering chime. And then we're bringing in different voices. So one of our parish associates did our opening prayer. And this Sunday we sang, we muted everybody. Heather Lynn, if some of you may know, came on from Colorado and led us in singing a hymn, muted everyone together. It seemed to go really well. Her sound was great. She has a separate mic, was able to do original sound, worked out really well. So we'll just flip through this chorus. Then I do a confession. And this time I had them do a corporate confession. So it was muted. People could confess, do the confession together. And then I do, this is our litany of forgiveness that we do every Sunday anyway. So just use that. Then passing of the peace for those, this is the best part, is that I have everybody switch to gallery view. And then I remind them that they should scroll, smile at each other, wave, they can chat. It's just a matter of time where they can get together and interact with each other. And it's the first time that they see each other's faces on that Sunday. And that's always really lovely, lovely, lovely. So you want to go ahead and do that. I'm going to get some more people now. So then I do the reveal, and then I do our Lectio Divina 3 times. Those of you that do Lectio, pretty easy to do. And then I do a very brief message and talked a little bit about anxiety and normalcy and what that's swirling around. And looked at some of how we're returning to some patterns that we've had when we were just being in church. My favorite picture ever is this donkey in front of a church. So it goes with orneriness. And then about how we still move into this caring and calling, and that our gifts are being reimagined, revealed in the middle of what's going on. How do we still live out our call? All right, then I do some prayer, and then we do a reveal again. And we had our offering this Sunday was from Alex McNeil, the executive director at More Light Presbyterians. So Alex came on. I reminded them all to go to speaker view so that they could hear Alex. And then Heather Lynn did some special music, prayers of the people. I remind them how we do prayers of the people, again, for visitors who've not done this with us before. Important for them to get to know what's happening. We use the raise hand located at the bottom of the participants list, and it works fairly well. And then we have a person that calls on the person and unmutes them. So we're clear, like, you don't have to unmute. Somebody will call on you and unmute. And then we have people lift up prayers in the chat room as well. The prayers that we had, so we do a mix of people using the raise hand in the participants list, but also we have a couple of people that I just asked to scroll through and see if anybody's actually raising their hands. Because when you say use the raise hand thing in your participants list, you know that there are people that are just raising their hands. So, and we just kind of, it just goes and it's on, we move them to speaker view again. So anytime somebody lifts up a prayer, they can actually see what is going on. And then I reveal back to the gallery view, and that's it. That's all all the slides through the end, and we do our prayers, we do communion, and we do the charge. All right, let's see if anybody else is in the waiting room. All right, we'll let folks in from the waiting room. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing. Just so you know, I had a bloody nose this morning, so I have a little thing in my nose. Just don't want to shock anybody. All right. There you are. Hello, beautiful people. All right, so let's use the participants list. Does anybody have any questions right off? And then I'm gonna we'll do some question and answer. Any thoughts if you did something today? We're a little smaller group, so we can feel free to do a little more sharing if there are things that you discovered, or if you have any questions. And then in about 10-15 minutes, I'm going to ask Andrew Yeager Buckley to share a little bit about streaming, so we can have some conversations about streaming. All right, so let's go. I'm looking for people to raise your hand using the participants one. So I'm just going through the thing, and if anybody has any questions. All right, George, I'm gonna unmute you. Oh,
Thank you.
go ahead, George.
Hi. So we yesterday we had our second Zoom worship meeting, and our attendance has been very good. We had someone who, as you said last week, tried to do the screen share, thinking they were turning their video on,
Yep.
and up comes their tax form. So really, I would emphasize what you just said. Make sure others can't share. One of the things that we have found that is very effective is doing participation and sharing as on the sermon, and it's been amazing. It doesn't necessarily work in an actual congregation, but on the Zoom platform, it's great. I was amazed at how many people really shared. So
Yeah.
It's a good device.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, George. Thank you. Go ahead and mute yourself. Rachel, got you unmuted. Go for it.
I just wanted to ask about, you said we had a reveal a few times in the service, but what is that?
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. Code language. We develop it in every culture thing we do. So that's when so I'm preparing them to know they're going to go from the slide share where they're going to see the slides to everybody's going to see them. So it's almost my prompt, like, okay, everybody's going to see you now. So whatever you need to do, get there. So George, thank you. That's a much safer screen share story, thankfully. But if you need to lock your screen shares, so you could do that down in your share at the bottom. You have some options under advanced sharing. You can you can change your sharing so that people can't share it. You can also do that in your main settings in your account, but during the meeting itself, go to your share at the bottom and advanced sharing, and then it'll say don't allow anybody else to share their screen. So you want to make sure you do that. All right. Other questions I'm looking here. How about Nick? I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead, Nick.
Hey, how's it going, guys? We split out into groups as well. We did that. This is our third week doing it, and we've had some feedback from people who don't want to do that, who have had hard times. So this week we gave them the opportunity to not accept that invitation because I guess get the invitation up there, and to stay in the main thing. And on the screen there, I played just some music and kept the small groups question up there and asked them to reflect on that. And so we had about maybe 5% of our folks who didn't go into those groups. It was a small number, but that allowed them to not be in that, because I had heard a lot of feedback from people being like, I don't want to do it in church. I don't want to do it on here. I don't like people. I come. So that's.
So let me ask you, Nick, just because you're using rooms. I don't know if other people have gotten to that level, but so about how many people do you have joining you, logging in?
We had like 70.
Okay, and then you broke them into how many rooms?
We broke them into 7. We kept the rooms big, assuming some people weren't coming in. And also I invited people to, if they were going into those breakout rooms, if they just wanted to no one felt forced to share.
Okay.
So last week we had them about 6, because that's how many people I feel like would be a good sharing group. And then people didn't go into them, or they didn't know how to unmute themselves. The other piece of that I remembered is that I unmuted everyone before I sent them into their rooms, because you don't have that access to do that in there. And some of our older folks who are on phones and all that stuff weren't able to figure that out once they were in there. So that was the change we did.
Thank you. Yeah, it does become. We thought about breaking in to rooms, but there's like another level of confusion that it can create. I've noticed that. And so depending on I think it's a great idea to have something going on in the main thing so that people don't. The other thing that we've noticed people doing is people sent me pictures. Their family are now projecting it up onto their screen. So they're not actually interacting in the same way unless one person's on their phone kind of unmuting stuff. So it's an interesting, that's great. Thank you. There are some questions in there in the chat room for people that are using Room. So you may want to go there and go ahead and answer those. Great. Thanks, Ben.
Cool.
Thanks, Ben. All right. Other hand raises there. I'm looking. Anybody just want to jump in? Again, we don't have as many people this today, so it's cool. If you want to jump in and share anything or ask a question, feel free to unmute and go for it. Da-da-da.
Hey, Bruce, it's George again. One of the things that we, and I don't know if others have this situation, we've been using recorded music from our music team, and they are professionals. They belong to the music guilds and all that, or whatever the unions are. And there's an issue with us recording their music because of union restrictions. So just something to be aware of.
Great. Have you solved that at all? I would like, what's the...
I don't know, other than, record when it's not music playing or something. So, yeah.
Yeah, good. Thank you. All right, anybody else want to jump in with question or thought about how things went this Sunday?
Yeah, Kristen here, New York City.
All right, go for it.
We, what we were doing during the prayers of the people, we've always had prayer cards. And since there are no prayer cards and not everybody's on chat, because we do allow landlines and cell phones for the members that don't have connection, I've just opened it up sort of as a free-for-all, and people are responding very positively to hear people actually offer that, which we don't do normally anyway. Right. So it's actually been a very positive experience. And I personally would love to know more about how are you doing this music, embedding it and recording it, because we just have our musician doing it at home, and we mute everyone, but we hear her singing and playing. So I'd love to know how to sort of up that for Easter in particular.
Great. Yeah. So that's there's a long stream in the Facebook group around recording and all that. So, you're muted now. Go ahead and say that again.
Right. I just said I actually don't understand all that. Can anybody sort of do a synopsis of what are the steps we actually need, and do I need another camera or a different set? I mean, that would just be helpful for me.
Right.
To have
somebody who's recorded and wants to just go ahead and jump in and a very brief kind of how you might go about doing this. So we've recorded, and we've just decided to not use recordings in our worship service because we like the live component. But anybody has done that wants to go ahead and just jump in.
Well, I'm willing to share that our musicians were practicing last week, and we followed the steps that other people had suggested about which settings to use, original sound and unclicking the auto mic level and such. But the best sound quality was when music was only coming from a single source and everyone else was muted. Yeah. So the only way we could get layers of music was when either people within a family offered music from the same home, or one person could sing and play at the same time.
Right.
Have
you tried recording with a high-end kind of actual recording like to an MP4 and then playing it as if it was a YouTube video?
We have tried playing recorded music that's previously recorded. We didn't try doing it for this purpose, but we have recorded music. And like I think you said, recorded music doesn't have the same feel as live music. Yeah. So we haven't done that.
So we did recorded music, and what's important when you go to the share screen settings, even if you have the original sound turned on other places, in the shared screen setting, you got to check both of the boxes of original sound and I think there's a video sharing.
Yeah, you have to go to computer audio sharing so that it's drawing it from your computer versus.
But it's in when you're sharing your screen. That's the one I always keep forgetting, and then my music person yells at me on chat. And so you got to hit it when you do the share, because everything else, I don't know why it doesn't seem to carry over when you do the screen sharing. You got to hit it when you do the screen sharing.
Great, thank you all. All right, I'm going to call on Sally. Go for it, Sally.
I'm muting myself. So, so small congregation. Done it twice now, last week and yesterday. And last week, okay, the music stuff didn't work, which I gather is par for the course. And yesterday, everything went wrong, and I so I had a monitor in my computer, and things kept moving from the monitor to the computer and getting in the way of the other things for me to see. And then everything literally went wrong. I had all the pieces there and it didn't come together. And yeah, I have all these questions about locking screens and using music and how to not let things move around from my monitor to and I didn't do it. I know enough to know that I was not even touching anything and the stuff jumped from one screen to another. And so I know I need to do this co-host thing, but I really don't. I read what was in the chat, and that's helpful, but I still don't understand. I've got some tech savvy people who can help me, but I still don't understand how I would make them co-host and what I could give to them and what I need to keep control of.
Right. Okay, that's great. So one, awesome for trying, and it's going to go bad. I think it's, yesterday I had, so one of the things I did yesterday was I joined 2 accounts. And I thought that they would both be paid accounts. And then in the beginning of the service, everybody got a notice that said the worship was going to end in 10 minutes because I had mistakenly not done. And so fortunately, I was quick enough and I got in and I upgraded it and it was all fine. But so it's all going to go bad at some point. Just, it'll be okay. That's the one reasons to make somebody a co-host. So when you go to your participants view, you can there's a tab that says more, so it says mute and unmute and more, and then you want to go ahead and hit co-host, and then that way they'll have that control. So I think for you, what you want to do is make sure that you set a co-host and then practice this through a few times with your 2 screens so that you can make sure that you're not that something weird is not going on with your screens. Now you said it worked the first time. Okay. Yeah. I think it's a matter of just trying it again, do a practice session, see what, if it happens again, see if you can replicate the mistake, and then maybe come back to the group and we can try to figure out what's going on. Cool. Hey, Andrew, I'm going to go ahead and invite you to go ahead and share while I change my nosebleed thing. Andrew is at Central in Louisville, and I've known Andrew for a long time, and he's playing with the streaming stuff. I don't know, many of you probably this week, maybe it hit some snags with Facebook that they got overwhelmed. I know there were some churches here in the Bay Area that couldn't get their feeds to go because things were so packed. But Andrew, I'm going to invite you to share for about 10 minutes or so about your experience with streaming, what you're doing, goods, bads, all that kind of stuff. So Andrew, it's all yours.
All right. Hey, everybody. For us, streaming was never the plan A. Streaming for us was my fear of trusting Zoom, trust is the wrong word. Fear of members not being able to get signed into Zoom with some of the, if you're not a savvy computer user, the prompts of, oh, you need to download this app or you need to do this to gain entry, I knew would just be a non-starter for a large portion of our membership. So for me, it was a backup plan. We even promoted it that way. If you cannot connect to Zoom, go to this link on our Facebook page. Do not worry, you don't need a Facebook account. Anyone can access it. Click here. And in the end, that's what happened. We had about 65 folks that came into Zoom. And I noticed, because I was keeping in my window, about 15 to 20 that they either didn't even want to try with Zoom because they've never heard of it and it sounds crazy, but they've heard of Facebook. And a few of them even made notes. Andrew says I don't have to have an account. Like, you could see folks commenting in the Facebook live stream, oh my goodness, this is my first time on here. And so it created this other option that had less fear and anxiety around it. So, but what was interesting is the testing process. I even to offer that backup solution, I just didn't even trust myself. So I set up probably 4 different periods of time where I set up fake Zoom meetings, went into the advanced settings, enabled the Facebook Live option and the YouTube Live option, just trying to see which one was more consistent, which one sent when transmitting the signal or the live feed to that, which one worked more. And I found Facebook, honestly, connected very easily. One of the issues with using YouTube Live is if you are a power Google user, and I'll call you that if you have multiple Google accounts that you have assigned to your browser. So when you click on your email address, and sometimes you might want to sign into a different Gmail account that you have, that can be a major problem for sending your YouTube Live, your Zoom meeting to YouTube Live if the account that is associated with your church is not the primary account. And if a lot of that makes no sense to you, that means don't do it. Don't use YouTube Live if that doesn't make sense. But if it does make sense, you'll want to make sure that the church email address associated with your YouTube account is the primary account set as the default. If that doesn't make sense, I just would not recommend YouTube Live. There's nothing wrong with YouTube Live. It's wonderful, but that was the problem I ran into. Facebook, however, the best thing you can do is after you've done everything you know to do in Zoom, already be signed into Facebook. Have your church's Facebook page pulled up and already active in a browser. Whatever is the default browser on your website, internet, when you're going to the internet to websites, have that already up. So then the moment you send the live feed, you click the little button that says Facebook Live, if you're not already signed in, that's another barrier. And it actually will cause a weird error message that then when you try to sign in, it put me into a loop. So the way that I finally got it tested and worked multiple times was already being signed into my Facebook account that's associated with the church's Facebook page. And I never had a problem. Tested it 4 or 5 times this past week before Sunday. And then I just had anxiety, woke up Sunday morning like, oh, did I do it this way? And so then I did another test and it worked fine. For us moving forward, because that worked so well, I have just learned about, I had actually heard of these folks, Restream.io, that offers a free level account that you can pretty much set up your stream to go to multiple platforms. It's something I might play with, but for now, we're keeping it simple. We're not looking at trying to create some sort of huge broadcasting network of our worship service. But for me, if I can find another tool like this potential company, Restream, that can offer more redundancy, more backup solutions for that morning when Zoom does fail, and we can quickly say to folks, here are all these other places where you can find the feed. So that's streaming in particular. I'll just share one other really neat moment, 2 moments that are not related to streaming, but for our members that calling in was going to be the only option. We have a lot of folks, like most of you probably do as well, that are homebound or in care facilities, long-term care facilities. Registering was never going to be an option. So we intentionally had members of our church call those individuals and give them the phone number and the meeting ID to call into personally. Take the time to check in with them and then share with them that information. And that was really successful. And then during Prayers of the People, we had a dedicated time where we enabled all of the audio for our folks that called in. And I have to tell you, it was a precious moment to hear some of those voices who there was such joy in hearing their people. And then for them to hear one of our pastors respond to them and respond to whatever prayer was on their heart. But many of them just wanted to talk. And so all of a sudden in the Prayers of the People, hi, I miss my friends, and just but it was exactly what was supposed to happen. And the last thing I'll say is that anything that happens in the midst of these gatherings in this context is exactly what was supposed to happen. And don't overthink it. Don't think of it as that messed up, Because in the end, what I learned at the end of the day, when we turned on, worship ended, benediction, we turned on all the cameras, all the microphones, all they wanted to do was see and hear each other. And that's pretty much what's going to lead us towards offering possibly a Wednesday midday, Wednesday evening, just a gathering with no program. That's what was the most, that was really what was the greatest need. So anyhow, that's all.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. What lovely. I love you tell people, don't worry about it, but you did like 4 practices beforehand. Don't stress. But practicing, I think that is so important, because as you start, when you're in the middle of it, yesterday, as I was leading and my computer shut down, I had this we have, I don't know, I think we had 104 logged in at that point. And
Bruce, you look stricken.
You saw it going on, right? You were Andrew was
I began to pray for you. You did not look well.
Well, because Mike was like, oh no. And then when that thing, so I'm sorry, you were there, that the 10-minute thing showed up, I'm like, oh, and I knew exactly what I did. And so there is a thing, so I'm going to just share this with you all, if you, for those of you that have thought about this. So if you have multiple Zoom accounts now that are paid at that $15 level because you're doing so much Zoom, you want to make sure that you're not overlapping. So I have my personal one that I've been using for years, but then the church has one. You could actually invite that other account into your account so that your settings are the blanket settings. I thought that's a great idea, actually. So I joined the church account to mine so that all of my settings that I've worked out are going to match the church account. What I did not realize is that it drops down from the $15 month down to the basic when you do that. And that's when that 10-minute, I watch the people go, oh, yeah. So that's when it dropped it down to the 40-minute level. And we had been on since 9:30. So at 10 o'clock, it flashes a signal to everybody that's on, this service will end in 10 minutes. So I had to scramble. Fortunately, I was comfortable enough to do it. But yes, Andrew, my face probably was, oh, yeah. At least I don't think I swore, but I probably did. Anyway, so if you're thinking about that option, because it looks like a really cool option to do, just remember, you got to go back in. So I separated them, upgraded again, and now they're 2 separate ones again. So it looks like a great option to try to do, to create users and have people in there, but don't do it unless you may want to give that to maybe a members who want to do meetings, but that puts them down to the basic account. So yeah, there you go. That was a great learning. All right, let's go back to streaming. Does anybody have any questions for Andrew? It's Robin, did you have a question for Andrew? You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
I have many, but
Okay,
I will myself for this meeting and just say that the Facebook information that Andrew has been putting up has been terrific, and thank you very much. I mean, in the Zoom worship Facebook account. And one of the things that we've been learning is that number one, bandwidth plays a bigger issue than we thought. And number two, as we're finding that even 100 up, 100 down fiber, even gigabit levels of bandwidth are being throttled. I mean, we've got people in our music director has a gigabit, and you know, he shows us his how fast is your computer details, and it just keeps going up for upload, and then you get to download, it's like 17. So we're finding, I think, that the choking that's happening in the Bay Area is extreme at peak times and very extreme during Sunday morning. Have you found that at all in Louisville? Andrew.
So yeah, so I'll give a unfortunate other example of this. What we're finding through the company I work with, Worship Times, we are having throttling issues for sites of ours that are in particular parts of the country. The Verizon network in the Northeast is having significant issues. There's a particular network, I forget the company that oversees it, but in the Arizona area is having significant issues. So some of the issues going on that folks are pointing to Zoom or Facebook as being issues, what I'm beginning to learn through people that I work with that know way more about networking and hosting providers and then rack space and this, I know enough to be dangerous. And but what I'm learning is that there are about 4 or 5 choke points in the country right now where companies that their equipment is not handling the current stress that is being put on the system. And some of that is affecting some of our partner sites. And so we've had to move a lot of our church's websites to new systems. We did that Friday night in preparation for Sunday because we had approximately a 500% increase in traffic in the last 7 days for those sites in particular. But yeah, it's not consistent. And it's also not it's not a whole city. It just depends on who you get your service through. And is that particular company, I don't mean to throw Verizon under the bus, but that's the most recent example. We are able to identify that all of our clients that get service through Verizon in Jersey, Pennsylvania, parts of New York State, they are all experiencing the same delays and issues with live streaming. And so unfortunately, I don't have good advice. There's nothing you can change about that reality, but do know that those companies are all attempting to make upgrades in speeds that they never had budgeted for. And so it's each day we're getting reports of improvements.
Great. Oh, go ahead, follow up, Robbie, go ahead, and then we'll move on to someone else.
Thank you. So thank you so much. That was really helpful to know. And when you're doing live streaming, are you doing real video as opposed to Zoom, what Zoom calls video, which is just the faces you see here? Are you playing real video on live streaming Facebook and real audio, or professional level stuff?
So when you say real, do you mean pre-recorded content that you are playing and streaming through? No. So we've done for our first service, and I want to keep this in mind. I in no way am I a professional at this. I've been figuring this all out with you all side by side. I have experience doing a lot of live streaming over the years, but none of that experience speaks to this moment, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah.
This is all new for everyone. So no, I kind of pushed back with my church's leadership. Well, pushback's harsh. That they were taking my lead. I really encourage baby steps, that we do what we know we can do with the technology that we absolutely know how to manage and run, and nothing more for this first Sunday. So the bells and whistles that I've seen many folks talking about, a pre-recorded video and pre-recorded music and streaming that, I just said, no way. No, I'm not doing it until I want at least a week or two under my belt of doing this, having multiple leaders in multiple locations, some basic slides that I was, while our pastor Ann was preaching, I was following her script and making changes. I even kind of really encouraged and forced the idea of not this bouncing around of leadership. We have our seminary intern was going to kind of call to worship and opening and welcoming and passing of the peace. And then she was done with her portion of the service. No more Aaron the rest of the service. Then it was Ann, and then it went to Mark, our other pastor, and then it closed. And because I just didn't even want to deal with the moving around of multiple people. Yesterday was good, and I've got more comfortable, but I also don't want to get too cocky. So I just, for now, the idea of playing pre-recorded anything, well, I lie. I played pre-recorded audio as people arrived. That I felt comfortable doing. I knew I could play an audio file, and I figured out how to use the advanced sharing feature where you could just share audio from your computer. That felt like, ooh, fancy. But maybe next week we'll try to get our musician who said absolutely not to doing music live. I want to show him Bruce's service from yesterday to show here's a model for how this can work, where one person sings, plays, everyone else is muted. But no, we've kept it pretty simple.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Yes, I would echo, and I know in the chat room, so even our services where I was probably pretty cocky and felt like we could build something out pretty complex if we wanted to, kept it very, because it's not about what I can do. What I wanted to do is to have people feel like it was comfortable for them, that the technology wasn't going to be this like all of a sudden onslaught and wave of all this stuff. So we're slowly building it up. So last Sunday was the first time we introduced music, just because, and I made sure, because our music person that's not quite his strength, the technology, went out and found a friend who has the mics and has done this, and that she could do this well and lead. She's a worship leader and a songwriter. And so we knew that was going to be at a good level. And so that's what we did with that. So we've kind of just added on as the group. Not only my skills have felt more comfortable, but as the group is just comfortable with experiencing worship through this medium. I mean, unless you're a church that's really been doing this all along, this is new. Again, like Andrew said, this is new for everyone. And so even experiencing it this way, while folks are like, oh, like we're having conversations now on our fourth Sunday, people are like, so what happens when we go back face to face and we have these 25 or 30 people that are joining us and they're only here because it's online? I'm like, I don't know, but we have a month more to think about it. So I
Bruce,
think
can I say something to that as well?
Yep.
Talking about when we go back to what's normal, there's no going back, friends. We had a number of folks after worship say, this is great. Why haven't we been doing this and offering this all along? And then the voices and others continue to chime in. And I just began to hold my head, but also recognize that they're right. They're right. I mean, there is a reality that we have an opportunity. We have had these tools, and because of either fake ideas that we can't afford it, that's what big churches can only do. That's not really true, but we did prove that there are ways that we can connect with those that, for various reasons, not just health, can't physically make it to our space. And so I'm already churning in my head about like, how do we create a kit that's realistic, that doesn't require Andrew to be there every week?
I told our folks, I said, stop planning. Like people are like, hey, let's have a meeting and start planning this. I'm like, we are way out from having to think about this. Like, everybody calm down. Like, and this is me telling people calm down about the technology, which I think they were like, really? Okay, fine. All right, Scott, your hand has been up for a while. Do you still have a question? I'm going to unmute you. Scott Clark, go for it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's funny. I mean, folks love this so much. One of the things for me is how are we going to bring this sense of deep connection? Because that's what folks, they love the time when everybody's signing on and the 10 minutes that we leave it afterwards to see everybody and say hello. I had one sound comment that I put in there. We just did what Andrew did for the prelude. We have a beloved organist. So she recorded something and then I just took the MP4 file and put it in the PowerPoint. And you had to check the boxes and all of that. And then you had to go in the PowerPoint on the audio functions to kind of adjust the volume on that. But it was an odd harpsichord tune, so I don't know if we do that again. but technical wise, it wasn't that. It's about as much as I'd want to do. We're having a Teze chant with somebody on guitar, one person singing like you've seen here. I wanted to raise a couple more questions about Zoom bombing because I was concerned about that. So I've got the sharing so people can't share. So from what I've read, what's happening is folks, including white supremacists, are coming in like groups of 5, and they'll put racial epithets up on the screen if they can share. They'll do it audio-wise. And so we did a couple adjustments thinking that it was low probability that it would happen to us. But then in the face group, I was appalled to see that it actually happened to a couple churches. So we've got sharing locked, and then we're not going to allow people to unmute. The other 2 things I've seen are waiting rooms and registration that Bruce, both you and Andrew have mentioned. And so what I would appreciate your thoughts on are, because I'm trying to balance putting those protections in place with being a closet evangelical, raised by evangelicals, who, one of the cool things is, you know, our worship attendance is actually higher than it is in person. And we have folks from all over the country and a couple international people who are friends of the congregation who are joining us. So I kind of want to keep the access bar low for that purpose. And I really want to protect, because the two stories that I saw, it sounded like it was a violation and a trauma to people who saw it. So thoughts on
So I think you've done all the thinking about the levels of what you can do. So the waiting room is certainly one. The waiting room is a little bit, again, so we have a waiting room on this meeting, and so it's kind of having to keep kicking through and making sure people are not in the waiting room. And then one person keeps getting kicked off of the meeting apparently, and then so I'll admit, Kristen, I don't know where you are, but it comes back in the waiting room. And so somebody has to maintain and watch that waiting room so that folks, when they're coming in, you can also do a thing where as soon as the service starts, you can lock your service. So then then nobody else can come in. But then again, it's that like, well, but people don't come to church on time. So like, when do you do it? At 10:30 after a half an hour? Well, it seems like if people are going to Zoom bomb, they probably are going to do it. So, I mean, I think, again, I was not like, it wasn't a huge concern for us. And then I've seen that it happened Sunday, and my guess it's just going to increase. So we have a registration, but we took it off and are now open. So now what we're doing is we have our 3 co-hosts, and we talk through. I'm like, these are younger folks. They're not young, they're in their 20s. But I'm like, you have full permission. Drop people immediately if you see anything, hear anything. Just do it, and we'll deal with the ramifications later. So I have 3 that are watching that because it's, again, we had 100 or 103 or 104 at our peak logged in. So it's a lot of people to try to track. So I wouldn't have you do it. I would say, right, find some folks that are going to be in there so that they're right on it if anything happens. That registration, the waiting room again thing is if people are going to watch it, and so they can know the names. But then again, if you have guests coming in, they're not going to know who they are. So I think this is going to be a learning curve for us. But the other things you talked about, I think registration is a big loop. It's a big step. What we ended up doing was I send out a blast every Saturday night, Sunday morning, because we found that even when people know the link week to week, I get an email or somebody gets a text and say, "What's the link?" And I'm like, "It's the same link every weekend." Same one, but we send out a blast anyway, and that helps people get on. So I don't know. I think this is going to be a learning curve for us. Co-host. If you
is there any limit? Is there any limit to the number of co-hosts?
If there is, I haven't found it.
Okay, good. Good. That's great. That's really helpful to know.
Yeah. So anybody else want to share some thoughts about the Zoom bombing? Hopefully it hasn't happened to anybody. Anybody that wants to share that? All right.
Bruce.
Go for it.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I'm in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Our service was Zoom bombed yesterday. I posted about it in the group. So I just wanted to share, in case it's helpful for anybody, what they actually did. So in an effort to be accessible to people, I've been posting the link like everywhere. Luckily, I had screen sharing. Oh, I'll put my video on so you can see who I am. Hello. I had screen disabled, so I didn't share visuals. But they came in like a random time. We were near the end of the service. I was actually in the middle of the prayers of the people. And the weirdest thing was that they must have come and sort of lurked for a minute or two, because the first thing I heard, someone repeating a phrase that I had said. So it sort of sounded at first like an echo. And I sort of looked up and was like, what's the computer doing a weird thing? And then they launched into just like screaming racist and other vulgar epithets. And so then I had to quickly remove them from the meeting. And if we're lucky, screen sharing was not enabled, so they were not able to share any visuals. I heard another story of another church that the person that was embalming the visuals by it being their picture.
Oh.
I don't know if that happened, but maybe I was in the middle, I think, of sharing my screen. So at least I didn't see anything come up.
Great, thank you. Just so sorry that happened to you. That is a good, so one of the things that Scott had mentioned is when you do mute everyone, there's that little box that says allow people to unmute themselves. Just don't click that. And that then allows people to not, they won't be able to unmute themselves. So that's one, they can't share their screen, they can't unmute themselves. And we do that because, again, if you have a bunch of people monitoring the chat room who they generally know what's going on, they can manage their unmuting just fine. So that's good. Oh, I'm sorry, Chelsea. Hopefully you won't have it again.
I think you can also set it so that people are muted on entry. Yeah. So that's another way to do it. And again, I'm still trying to weigh, do we make people register? You know, how open, do we put a password on it? And yeah, weighing accessibility for people, because my people are really low tech and I didn't press at all.
Yep. Yeah, very much so.
Do I make it harder for them? Try as much as I can to increase safety.
So there's a couple of things you can do. You can do a registration and then turn it off. So this is one option. So you can have your public facing ones all be that registration link. Send that out, and then you can go back into the event and take registration off. But that first link will still make people register. But then you have a link that is a direct feed, and that's the one that we share with everybody. But our register link is still out there in a lot of places because I think, so Chelsea, I think that is one of the questions is where you share it and how you share that direct access link. We may want to just go ahead and not do that as much, but you can, if you start your meeting initially as a register meeting. Now, again, if you've already been doing this and people are used to links, this may not be worth it. But if you started as a registration, grab that link, use bit.ly to change the name so it looks great. Then you can go back in, take the registration requirement off. Those people who registered still get that link, but now your meeting will give you a link that's a direct in. So that is one way to do it. So it goes to the same meeting. One is just a registration portal. The other one is a direct one. And then you can decide where you share those. But it seems like most of us, we just need to have a second or third person on our chat room and just make sure that folks are on board with that. I want to call on one person before we're getting to the end, but Ann Dybert, are you still on? Or listen, oh, there she is. Okay, Ann, would you share a little bit, because I know that you are not super high tech, but what is this experience? Well, I tried to say, I've known Ann for a long time, so I'm not giving her a tip, but so what has this experience been for you sitting on the other side of this as folks are helping to lead worship? If you could just briefly talk about that for a minute.
So first, thank God for Andrea Yerbuckley, because the rest of our staff, I don't think we would be doing this. And we've got another church member who's been quick to load up on Zoom. And so she was a co-host yesterday. I would say, as the worship leader, we stripped our service down, as Andrew said. And I was nervous about preaching, which even feels like more, I just call it sharing some reflections. But I loved the challenge of like one idea for a sermon and the interaction with people in the chat room. I thought that was just beautiful. And I wasn't able to follow it a whole lot. I kind of read back as other people were leading different parts of the service. But that as a worship leader I loved that. And also the challenge just to preach tiny. give people one little nugget, which is not really my, it's not exactly what I do. But I felt more relaxed about it than I normally do on a Sunday morning.
Great.
Not because I hadn't done the work, but I was really just talking about the text, like if, you know, we were having a lectionary group meeting, that kind of conversation. So I really liked it.
Great, thank you. I don't know what's happening in the chat room, but I get this thing. Somehow we've moved into vegetable talk in the chat room somehow, and I don't know what's going on in there, but it sounds like we're building community. Thank you. I think this is the difference. People have asked me a lot about live streaming and Zoom worship, and that they're very different, because Zoom gives you this capacity to actually interact and see faces, whereas live streaming, you're somewhat kind of observing worship again. There may be some interaction in the Facebook chats and that kind of thing, but I think this can blow open our whole understanding of worship. Like, what does it mean for us to do this communally? And now when you go back into our pews, like we're all facing forward, we can't see each other. I mean, there's just a lot that can spark some really interesting conversations about it. One of the things that I do before I start my little reflection time is I tell people, like, over and over again, this is your chance. You can talk all the way through worship if you want. And so just to give people permission. And I kind of think that if I'm asking the right questions during that reflection time, then that chat interaction gets even more. And that's what we want. Folks are really interacting. I don't know if you noticed on my slides, I ask a chat room question that kind of encapsulates my whole reflection. So, and I repeat that question on each of my slides, so that I'm encouraging people to go ahead and interact, because listen, interact, whatever you want to do. So
can I jump back in?
Yep,
so I use that model of the one question that went through my 3 slides. And, you know, theologically, it's not just the preacher whose God is speaking to.
Yep.
It's all of us. So it really embodies more of that for me as a worship leader, which was fabulous.
Yeah. Well, and it requires a little bit of humility from us to realize that theology happens whether we're there or not. And so encouraging it. Now, I have not seen anybody yet find, you know, like, we're early in this, so people haven't kind of got back to their normal orneriness generally. So it'll be interesting to see, once people get a little more comfortable in that chat room with people, and how they start reverting back to interactions and ways of being that may not always be great. But I actually think that'll be a good thing. Like, eventually this becomes a little bit more normal. All right, we're at the end of our time. Again, I appreciate everybody coming to this. Go back to the Facebook group, invite people to join that. There's a lot of threads that are starting. One of them is share your slide decks, share your streams, do, you know, anything in there. Go ahead and keep talking. I love watching all the interaction. The chat room is great. I will send this recording out. I've yet to download all the transcripts and the chats, but I will do that this week and get those out. But I'll get this out to folks, and you can see it pretty soon. All right. You all have a great week. We'll see you wherever we see you on the internets. Have a good day. All right. Bye.